May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. How's everybody doing? Is everybody doing okay? Because it has been a hard week. We can't ignore that, right? And I loved the psalm, which really impressed itself on me, again, in the saying of it, which is what psalms are for. You're supposed to put them in your mouth and embody them, because they are the thanksgivings, the joys, the laments, the sorrows of God's people from the beginning of time. And the repeated phrase, I counted 3 times this morning, maybe you caught another one, do not fret yourselves. Do not fret yourselves. And somebody made the point to me a little earlier this morning that fret, in addition to what we think of, has the musical meaning. Does anybody play guitar, familiar with the frets on a guitar? That you cramp down on to limit the range and constrain the note to make it a different tone. So fretting yourself actually keeps you from being your full self. So the news cycles this week. Wow, right? Massive layoffs in governmental agencies and departments, deportations to notorious U.S. detention centers on foreign soil, firing cabinet members and department heads. The programs and systems and the people they affect matter to all of us, no matter how we voted in November. And each one of those programs, systems, and departments is incredibly complex, as are the medical, economic, social, and political needs that they have been created to address, and the availability and the allocation of resources to fund them. The ramifications of all of these issues are so complex and difficult that we really need our wits about us in these times, and all of the collaborative spirit we can muster. It's easy to shut down, though. Last week, a priest friend of mine in Hawaii described her congregation as both weary and wary of political conversation. I get that. We are exhausted by the conflict and fearful of disagreement's outcome, or maybe just discouraged and resigned. See, even the mainstream news is increasingly partisan in its delivery, with the other side, whichever one that is, right, explained away, recharacterized, or otherwise demonized or dismissed. And if you're brave enough to be out there on social media, bless your heart, you'll be barraged with vitriolic, incontrovertible truth and proof that any perspective other than the one in that post is delusional. Even if any part of any position is clearly right or wrong, factually, scripturally, morally, when you run it to ground and do all the work, we all lose if we fall into the trap of demonizing difference, unfriending those who disagree with us on Facebook, or avoiding family and friends who see things another way. From a practical standpoint, even when we're convinced we're right and that we have God and the Bible on our side, we're going to have to convince more than just the folks who already agree with us that our perspective is clearer, our approach is kinder, more effective, fair, and workable than the policy we think should change. And then there's that scriptural mandate, that inconvenient truth of love in Luke's gospel today. It's super easy to love those who love us and whose views and experience lines up with ours. But Luke's Jesus tells us that's not the tough love he's talking about. The clear message of Luke's gospel is to love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who abuse you. Jesus is calling us to love not just those who are easy to love, like babies who can't argue with us or everyone who already agrees with us. Jesus is calling us to love in a big, scary, difficult, risk-taking way our enemies. And his broad command of love doesn't leave anyone out. As my divinity school dean, Andrew McGowan, said in his post earlier this week, we can't leave the proponents of political positions we disagree with off our prayer lists. After all, they need it. We have a tough job ahead of us. No matter where we stand or think we stand on a particular proposed solution, first, we have to educate ourselves on the history, policy, law, and economics of the issues. We have to wrestle with real budgets, real complexity, and real nuance. Then, we have to wade through the political rhetoric that is meant to get us riled up, to create enemies out of those who see things another way. We have to be able to figure out what's really going on amidst all the sound and the fury. Is this difficult? Absolutely. Because love is really hard. And here's the thing, it's a verb, which means you got to do something. And it's an active verb, not a passive one. So here's the second thing. We've got to be able to work together to plan and organize our best way forward. If we clearly believe after study and diligent review, that there's a better way to address the real problems that affect all of us than what's in progress right now, we need to do our homework, learn about the issues, and support candidates with clear and workable solutions. The 2026 midterms and the 2028 general election will be coming up before we know it. And this is a biggie. We need to be able to convince more than just the people who already agree with us that the idea we support is the best way forward. Luke's gospel reading today is the source of what we call the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But see, Jesus didn't make up the golden rule. It appears in one form or another in numerous places in Jewish and Greek wisdom literature and beyond. Rabbi Hillel, for example, who lived around Jesus' time in the 1st century, is reported as saying, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to another." That is the entire Torah, and the rest is its interpretation. Just as the golden rule applies to all of us, whether we're the doer or the one who is done unto, Jesus is clear that we have to love everyone, even those who hate or abuse us, and not just our family and friends. And I don't think any of us gets to sit on the sidelines either, because that's that active verb thing with love. Rabbi Hillel of Golden Rule fame is also the source of the famous words, "If not you, who? If not now, when?" I'd like to add a third element of rigor to Rabbi Hillel's challenge. If not that, what? We can't just take potshots and propose weak, simplistic, or unworkable solutions. And we can't dismiss, minimize, or demonize each other. We need each other for the best, clearest, kindest, and broadest perspective. representing a spectrum of lived experience and culture to get to the nuanced response that is best for all of us. So how do we find ways to talk to one another and really, really listen? Not to explain how our conversational partner got it all wrong, and all that is necessary is just that they understand our correct point of view, but listen with genuine curiosity and empathy for the other's experience and concerns. Should we march, write letters to the editor and opinion pieces and make our voices heard? Absolutely. If we feel so called and believe that's the best way to build support for a new legislative delegation and program. But I believe if we really want to change the world, we can't skip the part of listening to each other with empathy and an open mind, wrestling with the difficult issues and forging and building support for the solutions that are best for all of us. President Lincoln called upon the better angels of our nature in his first inaugural address to our nation that was then, as now, deeply divided. We are not enemies, but friends, he said. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Paraphrasing Rabbi Hillel, if not you, who? If not now, when? If not that, what? We must not fret ourselves. Amen.